Hello everybody, back today with Christian and Sam. Hi guys.
Hello, everyone.
Is Sam going to be there or he's in the background?
Yeah, he's in the background.
Okay then, well anyway,
But
there's
he's here.
Sam there, but hi Sam. Anyway, yeah, we're back today. This is part 2. Obviously we talked the other day and people were very interested in it, Christian, and they said, oh, we can't wait for part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got, so basically fracking is leaching, and we were talking about leaching, and you just said it doesn't matter, fracking is leaching.
Well, yeah, they both do the same thing, don't they? And what blew my mind, I think it was about 2.5 years ago when I found out that fracking is connected to gold mining, and you think, is that what they're really doing, with the fact that it's done way out of sight somewhere, and it's always protected by the police, almost like there's something to be had there, something that they don't want people to see. And some of these protests have been massive on a large scale, and now they've made the laws to stop people getting near it, sort of thing, So there must be something more to it than just meets the eye.
It's probably what's causing a lot of the earthquakes.
Well, yeah, I mean, farmers have been involved within these protests because what it's doing to the land, the aquifers on the ground, as well as on the land itself, and other people have protested against it because it's going to destabilize their area, of where they live, and the amount of small earthquakes that have been happening to it. We know that the government just recently, with all the jargon that's gone on within Parliament about looking back at changing the laws for fracking, bringing it back, or banning it again.
Have you noticed though, Christian, they ban things and then they bring them back anyway. Once they ban them, it doesn't matter. I did, like we were talking last night with Alan and things, they can use wars to change laws, so they can promise you everything and then take it away. They use laws for wars for many things, immigration, changing the law. We always found that, didn't we? When they do something, it's always about 10 things in one. It's not just one thing they're dealing with. They're dealing with lots of things altogether in their world.
Yeah. I mean, one of the general signs is moving the goalposts to suit. And as one of my old friends used to say, that's exactly what it is at the end of the day. But, I mean, we were told, we've known that they've been fracking for a very, very long time. And it was about a year and a half ago that they said, well, Britain's got no gas, So what was all the fracking about then?
They were obviously desperate then, Christian, for gas. But we know that they can use our poo for that. They can make methane gas, but they can't make gas out of us.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they had all the old
they've got stations. So much of the crap. Why not make it out of our, because then they can put the end result probably back into manure. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like I watched some stuff from India and their sewage systems, and it seems a viable source of creating their own version of the gas. So, yeah. But from what I understood long ago, that India's got gas coming out of its ground, and they don't know what to do with it, and why don't you get companies going over there and installing what you call the pressure tanks to collect some of this gas, filling them up, pumping them full up, and then transporting them, why not, and this is like 15 years ago.
I mean, with a name like hydraulic, it's obviously quite big, isn't it?
Yeah.
Using those kind of words. And the thing is, it's going on anyway. Whether you believe it or not, or care or not, it's going on. I think it's affecting our world, to be honest.
And I think, in my past, I don't recall ever having as many earthquakes in Britain up until recent times, within the last 10 years or so.
Oh, I found documents that said that England had tsunamis and earthquakes in the 17 and 1800s, and they don't talk about it. And this may be how the chain link pier went in Brighton.
And there's mass evidence of large-scale mining as well. So was that taboo? You know, why we were having these earthquakes? Because the mining operations were so huge, like they are today, on the scale that, you know, that we don't see on television or the news or the papers. You know, that's something that's kept from us on a daily basis. But we now know that the fracking has caused damage in various areas, and that's why.
I've just come across a picture. It says, Scientific American, water rises up as fracking expands.
Wow. I mean, a fine example is that one that you covered way back, which is, it wasn't quite fracking, but it's mining and fracking, where they're bringing the water in and out, you know, to suit temperatures and to suit the way they operate.
They've got to do it around water. All the pictures have got water with it.
Yes, it's the same in gold mines. It's the same in various other mines. Water's always one of the things that they use.
So when you see those little things out in the fields, it's not necessarily for oil. Or I suppose that's fracking.
Yes.
Oh, one second, Christian. Someone just tried to call me. Right, carry on.
Minerals from the ground, you know. And like I said, when I found out that fracking is connected to gold mining, it just blew my mind.
Wow. Everything's connected to something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the world we live in, isn't it?
And anyway, you often find that what's happening isn't the way you think it is, even if they've told you. It's always some other way. Like basically, to go to court, you've got to be a solicitor, really, and a common law solicitor.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just be a human or a person. You've got to be so equipped. Everything is so done behind our backs, and then we're finding things out. And then when you realise what it really means after what they've told you, everything just keeps changing, and you're a bit in sort of aftermath, aren't you? Because it's just so much all the time.
Yeah, I think it's like we're all Dorothy's from the Wizard of Oz, trying to establish what's really going on.
Oh,
you know, and then
Christian, it says here, right? It's just on it'll mess up my recording, but it says between 2007 and 2013, consumer gas bills dropped by 13 billion per year as the result of increased fracking.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. And then only about 18 months ago, they came out and said that we had no gas, and that Putin's responsible for withholding the pipelines and whatnot. And then we got that northern
and it changes now
line.
because we've got a war with Russia, so it changes again.
Yeah,
I know it doesn't. I know it doesn't, and you know, when you have such a small part from them, why do all the prices go up? But that's what they've done, and people believe it.
Yeah, it's controlling the narrative, isn't it? At the end of the day, and that's what they've been doing these last few years.
It's not even probably the last few years. It's just that we've noticed it happening in the last so many years.
As the information flow increases and the outlets expand.
We've got all these rules to look after us for food, right? And all these rules everybody has to be in, whether you're at the sort of slaughter side or the bakery side or the shop side, but they don't seem to work. And they're feeding, you know, putting rat poison in children's cereals, and all this is going on when all these rules are there, so these things shouldn't happen, but they do. And it's the same with everything. You think you've got all these rules for everything, and then you realise, like me, I wanted to be a counsellor, and what I realised was, when I was doing it, was the law is always protecting the other person. So when they look at me, the law's protecting me, and when I look at them, the law's protecting them. And you just realise it's all a farce. All of it. It doesn't work. None of it.
Well, this is one of the things that me and Sam's been speaking about, of how important some of the older laws are. And when you look at the United States, as well as the UK, that if you keep increasing the laws, you're going to bypass the old laws and laws that have been created.
Yeah, but I saw that the other day, and I have this video. Was it you that sent it to me? The guy from Ireland?
Yeah.
So basically, you can tell he wants it back to the way it was, and hardly anybody seems to know that Ireland was independent, even maybe for a year. And then it's all got chomped up, because even when it thought it was independent, it wasn't. It was reporting to Charles anyway. You just can't get away from the things, can you? No matter what you do, it's always got them at the end of it.
Well, I mean, Ireland is one of these places that has been fighting for its independence solidly for a very long time, and still are in various ways, you know.
Yeah, but they had the document.
But
It was amended, and then when it was actually back, it actually one meant independence and one didn't. And then it's just like this is why they can have wars, because in the wars they change the law. So I can promise you anything, and then we'll have a law, and I'll change it all. So what you think you voted for, you don't get what you think you voted for. Because the law
yeah,
means emergency law, and that can bring immigration, change the laws. They're doing everything. They need a war. They've got to have one because they've got to change the laws in it, and it'll always be against us.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're fracking us, you know, as a populace, you know, in a roundabout way. We are being transferred from here to there, you know, and it's like you're filling the gaps for somewhere else while you're decreasing the gaps, but just in that process creating change, you know. And this is exactly the same thing with mining, you know, where some lands become
Well, you can see if they do it, and they do this underground, you can see maybe why all the sinkholes are turning up.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been prolific over the last 10, 15 years.
But those sinkholes look like Dim Dillinger's, what's happened in Siberia, where he's reckoning that there's loads of towns and some, you know, hydraulic water thing, whenever it was, did it, and now it's all rock. And underneath there's all this, it's been covered in, like, it's now rock. It's petrified. And then the same thing happened in Ireland, on the Aran Islands. They've got circles on there, and you can tell that's been heavily mined. And nearly all this mining was over by the 1900s. So whoever thinks that they weren't civilised and quite progressed in technology, they had to be. They were far more advanced than we are today.
I think this is why I brought the farmers' point of view into it, because they're saying that their land is going to make their lands unarable. You know, and when you begin to realise that it's not just destroying the land, it's destroying its capacity to regenerate. So this is where you start creating desert land, isn't it? You know, where you just cannot grow anything, as well as never mind destabilising the ground. You know, from what I heard, that they created a law where they can just say, well, we can frack underneath your house. Well, who wants to be fracked underneath? You know. It's insane.
Yes, we don't, you know, and you often find out about it too late. It's already happening when you realise what's going on, if you know what I mean. This is what, with fracking, it's already been happening for years.
Well, yeah, this is where the leaching comes into it. I mean, when I found out that's an older version process of the same thing as fracking, you know, I think we covered this point about getting blood out of a stone. Well, that's exactly what they're doing, isn't it, really? When they're fracking the hard ground below you, they're saying they're getting shale gas out of it, but is it just shale gas, or is it the mineral content of the land below it, you know, that makes everything else come up to the surface?
Or is fracking just their mining for what's under the ground, whatever it is? You know, a lot of our history seems to be a few feet under the ground somehow, a lot of it. So maybe, you know, they don't, you know, when you say gold, maybe they're throwing gold stashes, you know, some pirate's gold or something. I don't know, maybe they're finding other things down there, artifacts and things, and they're just lying. Because, you know, Marie Wheatley told me one day that wherever you see an army base, there's something else there, you know, like when we went to see the Long Barrows. So actually, she said, just see over there, they'd made a mock town, and then they used that town to play their game. So it looks like a town, but obviously nobody lives there because they play their war games there. And then she told me that a few years previous, that they used these mounds, well, she's saying they're elongated-headed people's mounds, and they were driving the tanks over them.
Yeah.
See, but they are all round, very, you know, like most. I remember when Brian Forrester told us that when he went to, he'd been to Stonehenge twice, but he went as a boy and he kind of touched the stones. And then when he went back with Marie Wheatley, he thought that it was the army. You know, we're looking at a national site and you feel like you're being herded through with the army. So why the army kind of thing there? Do you see what I mean? Everything's protected by an army. They don't look after us, they just look after the sacred places they're hiding.
Yeah, I mean, we've covered a bit of this in past blogs that we've done together, and we've come across many what you call abandoned mining towns, and in some cases, it's like everybody's just got up and left, and some of these other places that had mines, they've been flooded out, totally flooded out, so you cannot see
I
what's
wondered
there.
whether that's because they've so lied about our history and who was running it. Because I said the Spanish, which could be the Mexicans, that kind of thing was running it. But also the French were there, and we were in Canada, and they've lied about things. So if people are changing powers and that, they don't care. They wouldn't want it looking Mexican, would they? In America, they wouldn't want people to realise that a lot of Mexico ran America. So we wouldn't want people to realise that. So they get rid of the buildings, or no, let's just make the town 3 miles down the road and they'll forget this is here. I'm really shocked at that, how much is abandoned. I mean, we're not talking of a few places. We're talking like we are living in an abandoned place.
Yeah, or the remnants of something bigger that once was. It's like when they give you the palm, they show you what's in the palm of the hand, but you cannot see what the other hand's doing. On that premises, this is what they've been doing probably throughout my entire lifetime and yours, and probably people older than what we are, and they give you distraction of what's actually going on.
Fake news, and everybody's into that. Well, underneath your feet, they're doing other things.
Precisely, but like I said, one of the most constant things that I've come across is mining, and like our friend Alan, who is posting about the old mines, even up in Scotland. You know, it's when you see the evidence of it that these places have been flooded out as well. You know, it hides the fact that there was a mine there.
There are places sometimes where rivers run dry, and all these things that got this crappy excuse when it's probably them doing something like this.
Yeah, I mean, there was a river in the USA which got contaminated because one of the barriers bust open, and the entire
river. Bombay
turned,
Beach?
No, this is I can't remember. I think it was last year or the year before, and this is all processed chemicals from the mining of a gold mine, and when these barriers broke, it flooded the river for weeks, didn't it? And it turned the whole river yellow. But these are all chemicals that were used, so they were using chemicals to mine the area, but there was so much of it contaminated the river for weeks and weeks. I'm not sure if it's even clear now, but that was mining waste product that was flooding the entire river for all that period of time. So they fracking the hell out of the mountainside, you know, for it to be so much that it did so much damage, you know. And it's the same process again. Water and mining, it equates to fracking.
Mate, can I make a contribution here?
Yeah, carry on.
I just want to make a small contribution. I come from a small town of Edinburgh, just as an example about seeing water sources just disappear. And we had on one side of town where I come from, we had a lot of still water sources, i.e. ponds. And we were known to be one of the last known areas that are home to a species known as the king newt. Now that species is not known to be around anymore. It's all but extinct, and that's happened, that's coincided with the disappearance of quite a few still water sources. Now, I don't want to be conspiracy minded about this, where is it going, but the conversation that we're having is
I see that we've destroyed most of the animals. I'm not saying, they've got saber-toothed tigers and things like that, which obviously they're saying are millions of years ago. But when you look at when the animals become extinct, most of them, it's the last 100 years.
Well, yeah, I'm only 34, so, I'm a younger guy noticing this, but already I've seen one species that was known to me. It's gone, our still water sources have gone, our small moving water sources are all being poisoned by industrial operations. But yeah, as for the ponds in the area, where I grew up, we had a place that's known as the dried up pond. We used to have newts that used to come and nest in our garden because we made our own one, next to it. But now it's all gone. So yeah, all of the still water sources are gone, and I don't know whether it's all just been sucked out from underneath us. To be fair, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, well, they seem to want water because they won't stop building houses. You know, they're building them on riverbeds, and the water could disappear for many reasons if you're building on riverbeds. Okay, and then river might not be there anymore, but they just, you know, I don't know. They just, and then later on, a few years later, all this flooding happens.
Yeah, my friend Sam has got a good point on this, because we've got an area here in my town where I come from, and they built in a region that used to be a floodplain. All right, it hasn't been a floodplain for a little while now, not since the 90s. And it's like all that water hasn't come back. And fair enough, there's been drainage, but it's a prolific area that did have a lot of water come every so often, and that hasn't happened either. So is the water being used for fracking, or are we being dried out? And we've seen the same thing, the same scenario across other places in the world. It's like the disappearance of water, you know, like some of the lakes in America, and not just in America, in other places, you know, even in Indonesia and the Arabian Peninsula. So yeah, it's like water is disappearing. Is it because of the fracking and they've drilled too far down? You know, who knows? But in relation to what fracking is, I think it's connected to mining more so than what we're being told about the gas.
Well, maybe the water's just about getting to that level's about the hydraulic part of it, because they need the water to flush things out.
Yeah, that seems to be the case, doesn't it? You know.
But again, you know, we talked about it on the other hangout where there was this big cave. It was in, I think it was in South America, and they had to wear a suit to go in there because it was that hot, and the suit was, it had coolants in it, and they reckoned you could last in there about 10-20 minutes. And it used to have water in it, but because they're mining, they've taken the water out, and the guy said, oh, well, when we finished, we'll put it back. But I mean, that's an accident waiting to happen then, isn't it? The water's there to cool it.
Yeah, because you're destabilising a large amount of ground, you know, the actual entire area around it.
So it had great big crystals in there where they were. Enormous great crystals.
Ancient part of history of this world. And what's it pertain to? It's the mineral thing again, isn't it? It's always about the minerals. And this is what, with any research that I've done in the past, it always reflects back to mining. And I'm thinking, why is that? You know, and it more or less suggests that we are a giant mine. And when you look at the maps of old, you know that there was more lands that have now sunken into the sea. You know, we learned about continents that are talked about by great philosophers of the past, you know, and writers of the past. But they're more or less in the ocean, sunk. You know, we ourselves have asked questions about Doggerland and Friesland. You know, where are they now? And
well,
I remember hearing about.
I think we just joined to Belgium. I think there was a causeway kind of thing across there. I don't think we joined right the way round, and there is buildings out there, but in some kind of water problem. You know, I told you, I made a video about it a couple of years ago on Sun and Moon about, you know, water problems. You know, like half of Scotland is now in the water.
Yeah.
Maybe not half, but there's a big section of Scotland now underwater because of tsunamis.
Yeah. And a lot of the fracking that's been done is round about the borders of England and Scotland.
I found a video of a lady talking she was on the right-hand side, up, not by Scotland, but she was up there quite north. And she was, you know, those are the stories I like, because she's not interested in what YouTube think about her. She's a sightseeing person in the town, and she goes to the beach and she says, you know, this tsunami happened and the original town is out there, and the original South Sea is out in the sea. So we obviously were bigger, and we've had there's obviously been a tsunami or something's happened because we were bigger. England was bigger, Scotland was bigger. I think it hit Scotland worse than it did down here, but we lost the chain link pier in Brighton. I don't know, we can't put it all together because the history doesn't show us that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reports that you have seen on the news is the fact that the eradication of the shorelines, and if they really were worried about this thing called climate change, but the ground itself is part of the climate, isn't it? We live on the ground, so why aren't they more concerned that the erasure of the coastlines is important as well as climate change, and they're not doing much about it.
I'm not sure if I mean, I know bits of land fall into the sea, but have things really changed? You know, we've got all these piers around this country that are built in the 1800s. Well, they're, apart from when they make them burn, those ones are still there. So if they're still there and they're not underwater, then the shoreline hasn't really changed.
Well, I mean, when you look at it, the bigger picture, where the shorelines are eroding, there have been mining processes in the past, in the long past, you know, for copper, tin, you know, minerals of that sort.
I remember down here, you know, off of Miami, down the bottom then, and out in the sea, there's a star fort about 60, whatever it is, it's so many miles out in the sea. But I just caught this video with this person saying that originally they found trees out in the water now, so the land obviously extended much further down, and that's been covered with water. So, you know, but the world changes a bit. You know, and if a tsunami happens, all that water goes across, maybe where it's come from leaves more land and less land where it's going.
Well, I think in general, our general culture, not just as Westerners, I think globally right now, because we've pretty much been globalized, all of us, but I think our attitude generally is sort of somewhat immature compared to our predecessors enough. So I consider maybe that, those before us, like the ancients, they just more like had this more mature grasp of the idea that they know the sea rises and falls over generations. And so, I think maybe we've just been told that the sea never changes its level, and so it's considered, miraculous or even biblical, because it is like.
In one of the Roman times, like not obviously recently, we're talking of 1,000 years ago, they said it was Mediterranean-like here.
Yeah, I've heard all kinds of stories. But I just find myself now, the culture that I live in now, I find myself surrounded by people who, I don't know, the idea of normality is that nothing ever changes, and that, when something happens, like, an earthquake, that it's, somehow out of the ordinary. But I don't know, to quote Plato, the Egyptians told Solon that there were many cataclysms before and there'll be many again. So, I think it's be kind of foolish to consider that think the land's always been the same. And
we're in it's kind of dead, but it's alive. We have winds, we have summers, springs, things are changing. We're ploughing the land, things are moving a bit. And as like Christians saying, at one point over there might have, hundreds of thousands of houses. Oh, now it's a desert. I don't know how this quite happens, but they don't care destroying and leaving either. They don't care.
It's said there's a continent under Antarctica, under all that ice, and people, it's not that rare for me to hear people say that they think it used to be a green land, that's an entire continent, Assumedly humans would have lived there, Well,
I saw some pictures the other day from there, and it did look like buildings and statues and things were there, but these were taken like probably 1920 or something. 27.
Yeah, I haven't looked at much of this stuff, but it's not rare to hear people, speak about these things. So,
my honest belief is that we aren't that ignorant to make mistakes of the past and repeat them ourselves as human living beings. So my belief is there's something else in charge that keeps this place being turned into mine for one thing or another on a continuous basis, when we know we have free energy sources that we can enable, the actual, I'm not talking about the wind turbines, I'm talking about just the waves of the water. I know some of it is already happening, but there are various other ways of using these free energy sources. But what we're doing with the mining is just repeating history time and time again. And as a human race, I don't think we are as ignorant to keep doing it. So I think there's something else involved that keeps us going back to doing the same mistakes of the past. This is where we're not moving on. It's like the repetition of the electric car. We had the electric car God knows how long ago, and now we're going back to it. You know, that's not progress, that's regress, that's going
I've
backwards.
done all that. I'm really annoyed when I look at it. So trains were electric, then they were coal, then they were diesel, and now they've gone back to electric. We're talking of millions of pounds to change the tracks, to change the trains, whatever they've done, just to go back to what we were in the first place. And it's like planes. We know that they don't carry lots of petrol, that they are using air. And it's just like, oh, everything is a lie. Everything keeps changing. It's just so annoying.
In the 90s, my grandma used to borrow an electric milk float from the local milk company. You know, they were kind enough to donate it to us because, you know, my grandma used to do community work. And I seem to remember that battery used to last all day, you know, with half a town standing on it. You know, they'd give us
we forget about the milkman, don't we? Bringing our milk with that little electric float. I was a little girl in the 60s, they were doing it.
My grandma was a little old lady, and she could carry that battery, the spare one, you know, for the next day. Then,
I know what you mean. What you're saying is it lasted forever. Oh, I've just gone to the shops. The batteries are run out.
Yeah, these were efficient vehicles, man. You know, they weren't very fast, but like I said, they could carry the whole town, mate, you know.
They simply go on forever, didn't they? They simply go on forever.
Yeah, and now what is it? You get 200 miles if you're lucky. And then you've got to queue and wait at some station to charge your car. Making it look like this is new technology when we've had it all before and even hundreds of years ago. It's just pathetic, isn't it?
I was in Wellingborough yesterday and I found 2 charging stations outside the church, right by where I used to live, and I thought, man, anybody who prays to God is just going to pray that they stop all this crap and take these things away, you know, like not plug their car into this thing, you know.
We need hundreds of them if everybody went electric.
Yeah, but then they're all just going to set on fire, innit? Everyone's going to get electric.
Oh yeah, you go back. Look at the car. Boof! It blows up when you plug it in. Yeah. I also, you know, because obviously Sam hasn't heard this, but I also wondered whether we were the grandchildren or the great-great-great-great-grandchildren of the miners that were here and did all this, because we were totally mined before the 1900s. It was over at the 1900s. They stopped. And it'd been going for at least a few hundred years.
And I'd say a little bit longer, because when you look at the likes of the East, you think it's, as we were told as kids, oh, it's just a dead thing, you know, like the Sahara, it grows by a certain amount of feet per year. But when you consider that out there, there's been hundreds of years of mining, and when you look at the landscape, you think, yeah, they've taken away most of the topsoil, the good mineral content of the land, and you think, well, is that the reason why it has turned into unarable land? And
mind you, land destroys everything, doesn't it? Really, I mean, looking at these pictures here, I'm just going to put one on. Obviously, you can't see it because I'm looking at the pictures, but we're just going over here to that. Look, fracking. Look at it. It's all barren around everything, and that's how they'll leave it. This area will just be barren. They've taken all the nice stuff away. It's just earth. It's just everything's just earth.
The video link that I watched a few years back, and I couldn't believe how many of these fracking wells there were for gas, right? And you're talking tens of thousands. And you think, well, if they're looking for gas...
You know what, they're probably piping it from the other countries.
Why do they need so many wells close to each other if it's gas? Yeah, you would have thought you'd try and contain it to just one singular hole and channel it. But they got thousands upon thousands upon thousands of these fracking wells, and it's almost like the oil thing from over 100 years ago. But this is even worse, you know, because there's that many of them, and you think, well, it's gas, you need to channel it. Don't let it escape. Why would you need tens of thousands of holes? Is it something to do with mining rather than the gas? And that's the way I saw it, you know, a few years back. You know, and the fact that they use the chemicals in the water at high pressure, you think, are they getting mineral out or gas? You know, and then all the secrecy behind the fracking sites in Britain. And the minute protesters turn up, it changes the equation completely.
to be fair, I've been looking. I'm not an expert on it. I've been, trying to learn the basics of physics and stuff. But I just don't understand how the core of this Earth is molten. Under such great weight, and so you can say I've got a bit of an imagination, but I just think they're digging to help. I really do. I just think they're digging to help.
Imagine, just say even with the fracking, it could cause a big earthquake that could knock us off our access. We were floating through space.
I'm thinking even worse. They need to read Tolkien, because the dwarves did it, and they got this bulwark of Morgoth. Like he kind of looked like Satan. So yeah, call me a joker, but I just think they don't know what they're doing. They're trying to get some stuff. We know this. Like the average druggie, he just wants to get some stuff, doesn't he? And he'll do what he can to get it. And I think they're literally being like gas heads, aren't they? They're going under there, they're smashing everything up, they're getting all the gas, and they just I don't think they really thought about what's going to happen, let alone care. So they're just like, they're like the dwarves from the Lord of the Rings, and they're going to do something that's like, we're all going to pay for it.
I mean, it's like Karen, it's like another blog we did some time back about this town that had a fire beneath it. Was that gas that was causing it, and nobody wanted the gas?
That one was, I can't remember what it's called now, but it was coal. But you don't want anybody helping you, like all these people come in and help. I think they ruin it for you. That's what they do. They don't help you. They ruin your cause for you. Yeah, but you can see it. That was in a coal sort of vein, and it might take another 100 years, and then they'll dig it all up.
Yeah, the underground coal fires that they start. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. It's like these people are children. To me, that's terrifying. Like, when you go underground and just start a massive fire underneath everyone's house and boil us all alive, and they're like, oh, sorry, mate. We just really wanted the gas, didn't we? Like...
This is what I'm saying. What helped the fire to burn for as many decades as it did? There must have been gas down there to aid the fire to continue in the way it did for all them decades.
Well, maybe it wasn't. Maybe they've told everybody that it was fires. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was gas. You said in India it comes up out of the land. Yeah. Maybe they thought that they were getting fumes from coal fires, but they weren't. It was gas.
Yeah.
I've heard there's this strange culture amongst people in India where there's some people where they won't eat things out of the ground. They only eat off trees, so a lot of veg they won't touch. I mean, this is just a rumour, but I've heard it from more than one person claiming to have been. And I don't know, maybe this is something to do with poisoning their soil and this kind of thing.
Well, because I just think we're one big experiment all the time. They've told us we've got cows, pigs and sheep, and they're the animals, but they're lying. We're the animals as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that one. I mean,
that's true.
When it comes to fracking, I can go back about 15 years ago when I was being sent video footage of Australians just lighting a flame in their rivers, because their rivers have been so contaminated by either gas coming up through the river, and that's why the actual river itself is catching fire. So that's going back 15 years ago. So if the gas is still there and they've been fracking, what are they fracking for? If the gas is still there, the gas is coming through the river.
Have you thought, Christian, have you thought that, we know that something happened to us, but if there's natural gas and it's under the ground, maybe that's what killed us. That's what killed the first lot. They didn't realise they built all the houses all over these places where gas is going to come up and kill you. I don't know. Maybe it's a more natural death.
It's the gas that's supposedly that does come into houses. Is it neon gas?
I don't know.
That's the invisible gas, the one that you can't smell.
Well, is it? No, I was going to say not carbon.
No, it's I can't think clearly at the moment, but it's non-smelling, it's non-aromatic. It just gets you. I think it's the gas that causes the Legionnaires or whatever. It's associated with that. But we've got a certain amount of types of gas that. But when you think about that, even through rivers where they have been fracking, and you think, well, if the gas is still coming up in such huge quantities and they finish fracking there, why did they leave? Why? That's what they were fracking for, wasn't it?
Well,
I'm not trying to...
who knows anymore? Because even when we're looking things up, it changes, doesn't it? Everything changes all the time.
It's quite bizarre. It's really bizarre, and it's beyond me. But the majority of what it says, it's always about the minerals and the precious minerals when it comes to it. You know, and you just can't get away from it wherever you look. You know, even through ancient history. You know, it's.
I mean, they're going down where buildings and things will be.
Well, this is it. You know, like they said, you might be getting fracked underneath your house. Who would want that? You know, who would want that? Not me.
Well, we don't know what goes on underneath our feet, because in time we've realised that, you know, someone told me only so many weeks ago that there is a tunnel from, I think it's Edinburgh, and it goes to Turkey. You know, there's tunnels everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, some of these tunnels maybe from
all those tunnels?
times.
Who've done all these tunnels? I mean, when you think that we've connected to France, they did it anyway in the 1800s or the 1700s. They did it anyway. Golly.
I don't think B is very deep in these parts either. You know, when you talk about Doggerland, this is a mainstream fact. It was something only around, you know, don't quote me, around 10,000 years, something like that, 10, 12,000 years we've connected. So the sea's not that deep anyway in the area. When we look at our modern technology, well, scrap that. Yeah, we look at all these ancient megaliths, we still can't recreate them. So what point is just that it's very easy to tunnel. We're really good at it. We always have been. So there's loads, isn't it? You'd have to be an idiot to not think.
I know, but when they told us, they just had horses, carts, and shovels.
Yeah, and I think I'd have to agree with what Karen said earlier about are we the great-great-great-great-grandchildren of the original miners, and we today, as the human race, are just the borrowers. As in the program, the borrowers, we're just borrowing our way into something that we're not getting the benefits of it, or we're getting only a small benefit of it, but the real benefit is the actual mineral content, and that's being taken away. And I think that's what causes the destabilization of the ground, because you're taking something out. And if you're only replacing it with water, well, it's going to destabilize the ground below you, isn't it? You know, I think that's pretty prolific in various parts where certain countries have tried to reclaim the land by making land, but you've got to have the solid foundations below it for it to be stable.
I just wish they'd all go away and leave us alone. Yeah.
Perhaps if we all wish it together, it may just happen.
I just want them to go so badly. Please, before I die, that they're gone.
I'm thinking I'd like to go on a tunnel ride from Edinburgh to Turkey.
Someone told me about that. I can't substantiate it, but there are tunnels everywhere. I mean, you know, even when I watch those, you know, people when they're going around castles or abandoned places, they often find tunnels, and it's just like, wow, where is there not a tunnel?
Well, I mean, many people have posted on about the tunnels going through a tunnel system in America, so that seems to be like almost like a secondary railway system underneath the ground. You know, the way they're demonstrating it. You know, and there are a lot of places that even I know that they've already burrowed into the ground, you know, the things that we've been shown or been allowed to see, you know. So it's pretty prolific, isn't it?
So today really it's just about reminding people that they are doing this. You can ignore it, but they are doing it. They're always doing something.
Definitely.
The thing is that with fracking, a lot of people don't understand it. They don't, you know, there's a lot of different questions and viewpoints towards it. But my viewpoint towards it is whatever they're doing, this is always nefarious. You know, even if it's not that harmful, they'll find a way to harm people with it because they're bloody idiots. You know, they're just like literally the children, the people making the decisions, you know, to harvest these resources. And on top of that, I just can't help but look at the same people's policies and the things that they're doing. It just proves that everything's nefarious, you know. It's all this right now. I mean, you haven't even got to single out any sort of political party or group right now. It just seems that everybody from, from here, our country, to America, to Australia, all our Anglo-Saxon lot, most definitely are on this green agenda, this woke agenda. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Like, all of the things that they're into, they're just so nefarious. I mean, one example is that in California, they're now passed into law already that you can just recycle people, like as sludge, and like spread them on the field. They're just going to liquefy human beings. They don't respect the dead. It's these people that are passing all our policies, and that includes our energy policies. I mean, what they're going to do next? They're just going to burn us for fuel.
Well, they mine us from the moment we're born, and they mine us when we're dead.
Yeah. So it's just a big harvesting operation. Yeah, that's why I don't personally believe all the stuff like David Icke and lizard stuff. But I don't blame people for believing that these people are vampires, aliens, reptilians.
I actually believe, looking at the footage,
look at the policies they pass with no respect to human life. So when we speak about things like fracking, we talk about the potential danger. If I don't know what the potential dangers are, I'm just going to assume there are, and whatever dangers there are, these people will exploit or somehow manage to amplify the damage they can do. Because they're absolutely, like, if they're not evil, they're at the very least incompetent of doing things that are beneficial for their own.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I see it as most of it is computers doing it, whether it's an AI or a computer program. They've got, people that we know who've got blue eyes. Like, well, obviously I know the Queen's died now, but she had blue eyes. So did Prince Philip, Charles, William, Harry, Biden, Trump. I think even Putin. They've all got blue eyes, but when you see them on the television, they've got black, which means they can't be real. So we're being run by computer programs.
I've never noticed this. I'm going to start looking at that.
We're run by computer programs.
About the computer thing, I think you're right, because the ridiculous decisions. Let's just look at, like, say, Boris's decisions through the COVID, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's like
he can't even handle an umbrella. Do you remember that one?
Yeah. This guy is clearly, he's like taking instructions from some kind of neurotic AI. Like
they all work for the same person. I've made so many videos about this. I know it to an American, their eagle is the American eagle. It's fantastic, but that's an eagle, and Putin flies a double eagle. They all have the same boss. And I think that's the sad bit. So you don't want to vote for any of them because you're just voting for that system. With the guy with Ireland, which I mentioned, he noticed the Romans were in there. And even, I've just done churches. All the churches are Catholic. They're just branches of each other. And a Protestant means a Protestant, a protesting person against the Catholics, but we're still Catholics because they baptise you, the Trinitarian, which is technically Catholic. And I actually couldn't believe it. And we bumped into this, I thought, we weren't sure what he was because he looked Catholic, but we thought he was a vicar, like that, that kind of thing, but he isn't. He's in the Church of England, he is father, and that church, even though it's Church of England, believes in a modern Catholic way in the Protestant church. So they never broke away from the Catholics. And I've just worked that out. I was like, and he told me, he agreed with me, because that's what they're doing. You're like, well, when did they ever explain all that to us?
Do you think it'll take that long for the rest of England to figure out that Brexit never happened as well? A few hundred years.
Well, we weren't really in it. It's all a game. The whole thing is a game. It's like Monopoly, and we're in it, unfortunately. Every movie that they ever made, we're in that as well. Everything. It's happening to us, and we're realising it as it's happening. Whereas, that fateful day 2001, we realised afterwards. Well, some people realised on the day, but most of us, it hit us afterwards. But this, we're running with things, but they have the top trump, don't they? Because they're running the show.
Yeah, and I find it quite astonishing that now that we're out of Europe, we've had an influx of a heavy amount of Europeans than what we ever have. And you think, well, what's happened? Did we create a bridge from Europe to here so we can have more Europeans?
Remember they said
now
how
that we're
worse
out
it's
of
going
Europe?
to be for us, but everybody wants to come here.
Yeah, there must be a reason for
But
it.
this is what
Perhaps
they
we're
do. They
growing
have,
as an island.
we've looked. I bet you, Sam, when you look in your bloodline, you've got other countries there. Like I'm Welsh and Scottish, French and German. That's my bloodline. Even though I'm here, lots of people. Amy in America, she's more English than me. Her bloodline. So we find that we've always been moved around. They're moving us all the time.
Yeah. Is it the eradication of Tartarian people now? Is it that they've destroyed most of the buildings and now they're moving on to the people?
Yeah, I
the
worked that one
feeling
out a long time ago. Say you start off some of these countries that are Muslim have quite a lot of traditions, and then once they move here, maybe the parents are quite traditional, but their kids want to be like us in genes or whatever it is, and those children grow up like us, and all those traditions have gone. I'm not saying they're good or bad, but I noticed this is what happens. People don't carry on the traditions because they keep moving different countries.
Yeah, it's definitely a population takeover. That much is evident with the videos coming out of Ireland because it's all young men.
But even in Ireland, the potato famine, 3/4 of Ireland moved away after that. That's what history says.
Yeah, there's so many stories about the potato famine, but from what I
sounds like an
comprehend,
energy weapon now, doesn't it?
well, it is in a form, isn't it? When you think about it over the bigger picture.
Yeah. Well, today we've talked a bit more about leaching, which is fracking. So, is there any? Well, I know maybe Sam wants to say something as well, but is there anything we can say to people? Just be aware that that's what's happening. Christian.
Well, it's like I think we've covered the fact that they're saying that you can't get blood out of a stone, but obviously it appears that that's exactly what fracking is, isn't it? The mineral content within the rock is what they're fishing out. So, and I think the process was called in older times called leaching, and it was the same basic principle used, but with different equipment. Just the fact that technology changes, and we use what you call electronic hydraulic systems that get the mineral out. So, it's just a different process. In the older times, I think it was just a high water process, but it's still used today in gold panning, isn't it? They still use the same process of water and cleaning up the mineral content.
They could, in a sense, they could save us from it. There's masses of land that we don't live on. If Antarctica had buildings and that, why don't they go do the fracking there?
That's a good point, but perhaps it's already been mined to smithereens, and there's a duration of time they got to wait for it to ferment or to alkalize, alkalines, for the process to change over. But to me, Antarctica looks like it's already been mined to hell, the same as many other places. It's like the top parts have been already taken away. Just like that mine in Indonesia, where they've more or less removed the entire mountain, bored it out, just like the horseshoe shape that you see in Antarctica's pictures and the maps. So it's the same thing. In many parts of the world, you always come across that horseshoe shape where they've used high-tech machinery to take away the top soil. It's another way of fracking, but you don't have to dig the holes. You just take away the top end of it and then take out what you need, and the rest just becomes wasteland.
I did say, though, if you go to Google Maps, anybody can go and look at it, you'll see that the Earth has had electrical arkings. Some of them were really big, and some of them, where it went in, came out miles away. If you were there, you'd never have seen it come out. It was 40, 50 miles away. Some of them were more local. But when we looked it up, trees grew where the arcing went in, and ores grow where the arcing came out. So it's very fertile where it went in, and then where it came out is all where they're mining, like you're talking fracking.
And one of my opinions would be that when this arcing takes place, On the material on the ground, the biomatter, I think when this arcing takes place, it changes the entire composition of what the substance is at the time. You know, we know that in all the times that I think it's written in scripture that certain people were turned to stone. Was that the result of a plasmatic arcing event of the past? You know, and have these recent events been arcing events, but like a macro wave hitting certain places and more or less destroying just the infrastructure? Or is it DWS, directed energy weapons? We can't be sure, but the arcing events of the past are huge on a mega scale, and the maps depict this. You know, it's like they've been cooked.
Yes. Does Sam want to say anything?
Yeah, one thing about fracking, I was just going to say, probably if anybody's concerned about it, loads of people are concerned about fracking. I've heard all kinds of points of view towards it. But I'd say the most important thing is for people to put massive pressure on their local council to make an issue about it, or even to just raise questions about it, like actually directly contact your local council members and raise the question. You know, you got these guys, like these NIMBY guys, you know, that, like, which I'm with them, you know, when they say they don't want these useless wind turbines hanging around on the fields and stuff, you know, that we could use. But we all know they're crap. We all know it's like really, really bad and unhealthy to make those things, you know, let alone the crap, you know, like amount of power that they use. So, like, you know, you got these guys, and they get listened to if they put pressure on their local councils. You know, because I know locally the ones that we have, I think they've been, you know, the plans they got moved and stuff like that. And it's not just, you know, a couple of rich guys that have influence. If people do put pressure on the right people, they can have, you know, they can have their right information at the very least, or, you know, they can. Things like fracking, they can stop it. But yeah, the main point I'd say is that people should contact directly their local council members, you know, directly. Not so much maybe the MPs, you know, I'll try communicating with my local MP.
I find no one listens to you. I find that we're in here on our own and there's no one to help.
You still put pressure on the people who quite clearly it's their responsibility to take care, you know, of our local area. So regardless of, you know, we know these people are useless. Look at the last few years. So, you know, I'm not gonna pretend that we can all go and we can make a few phone calls and we can change it. But if we all do put pressure on these people, then we can guilt trip them into, you know, like, you know, they're wrecking our land, didn't they? That's what the people are saying. So yeah, if you think they're wrecking your land, then call your local council and like really stick it to them and tell them. And tell them and share your communications, write open letters to them, really just shame them into, you know, if they want to ignore you and they want to ignore your questions about safety, then yeah, just write them loads of open letters and put them all to shame and make them answer for what the hell this strange operation
Yeah, all we are is money. Money, money, money.
And I would say that I don't think any of us are really against sustainable development for the future that can be maintained. None of us truly against it, but like Sam just said about the wind turbines, when the blades are done or the turbines are done, the material used cannot be recycled, and then that gets put in a landfill, which ruins the land as well, which cannot be really made to the point that it's actually sustainable if you're ruining the land, you know, because at the end of the day, we need the land to live on. You know, and the land gives us whatever we need. You know, it's part of what we are. But if we keep maintaining and ruining the land and saying it's the sustainable development as an excuse, you're like...
You can only, if we feel like this right now, I mean, there's one here, I've seen this picture here. It's got loads of pipes. It says an accident waiting to happen. But imagine, if we feel like that watching these pictures, imagine what it was like before 1900s.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you one thing, you know, when we talk about it, I mean, who would have thought it, that, you know, hundreds of years ago, the wind turbine, this was like, you know, I mean, the windmill, like, this was a medieval marvel, from what I've heard. I love my medieval stuff, and, yeah, it was a medieval marvel of, you know, like, European agricultural people, you know, like, and, So nowadays they make these turbines and they don't even grind grain. You know, like what the hell is going on? Like, so they make inefficient amounts of electricity and they don't even grind grain. What the hell is going on?
Well, I'm a bit shocked. You know, like even we were talking about Brighton. Brighton had, I saw they showed you the windmills. It had loads of windmills, and we now know that windmills are to extract water. So Brighton must have flooded, but it's not in history.
Well, that's a good point he mentions, though, that the fact that they don't even grind grain, so, you know, while they're turning, it could be made more feasible, couldn't they, to use that energy in a different fashion, couldn't they?
Well, you could use it.
Yeah, so it's a very, very good valid point there.
It's really stupid. You could use a grain shaft to keep the turbine running when there's no wind. It's just like, it's non-sustainable. It's absolutely ridiculous.
When you're looking at the pictures, they just look like, I'd have said they were all oil ones, but they say fracking.
I look at it and I just think this is not the work of my people. This is not the work. This is when I'm looking at this. This is not the mind of like a European agricultural person, like I am. So I think, hell, make these things, get them off my land. Like at least make them grind grain or like do something good for us. Like can't we have some water coming out of them? So good for the kids or something. No, they don't let you go near them because they're crap. They know they're going to fall down and kill someone and their dog. And that's the only thing that's going to, they're just useless. They're crap. So, yeah, I just don't trust them. And like I said, it's these people that allow them to frack. They allow them to do this. They allow them to frack. Over in America, they allow them to melt the people down and spray them onto the fields. Like, they're just not really in it for us, are they,
No.
I mean, I dread the thought of a cemetery near me where they've sprayed all the dead bodies along the field, then they grow something on that field and you end up eating it. And that's not the natural process of how it's been done for thousands of years, It's just beyond me and my mind.
It makes me quite angry, really, that they've done this to us and there's no one, I realised a while ago, there's no one to go to. We can work things out, we can tell people, but what else can you do? YouTube, the whole lot, they run it all. Media.
Yeah, it's quite disturbing. It's quite disturbing, isn't it?
Mm.
When you look at the pure facts of like the amount of oil that's being used to keep these wind turbines going, and we're trying to get away from oil. It's laughable, isn't it?
It is. Christian, I kind of have to go somewhere shortly. We've been talking for about an hour. Is that all right?
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I've got to go out. I just remembered. But we've talked about it again, and like there's a picture up there, and it's just fields upon fields of it. Like, oh my God. Yeah, horrible. But very much appreciate you coming to talk about it, Christian. And Sam, thank you very much for your thoughts as well.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, so we'll say goodbye on air and then we'll say goodbye off air. So, for the on air bit, do you think you want to do any more on this, Christian?
No, I think we've covered it for the time being until we will might maybe find out a bit more research, do a bit more research on the subject of times of the leaching of older times, and an accurate account of how it was done and how it was used. There are other types of mines as well where it was involved in. So recover maybe at a later time and see what we can come up with.
Excellent. Well, anyway, thanks very much, guys, for your input and everything. It's always, what they're doing to us all the time. It never stops, does it?
No. So I'll say goodbye from here. Goodbye, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, guys.